Spin the dial, roll the dice, and pop that Pop-O-Matic bubble. For this special Patreon-sponsored episode, the Great Pop Culture Debate wants to go back to recess and discuss the best children's board and card games ever. I'm still waiting to be compensated for selling my life rights to the makers of Old Maid. I'm your host, Eric Resniak. Please welcome my panel for this episode. He did not pass go. He did not collect $200 on his way here. It's Bob Erlenbach.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Well, on a positive note, you apparently did win second place in a beauty contest, and you get a sickening supply of Anastasia Beverly Hills Cosmetics.
Oh my gosh, I'm so honored.
You should be, and I do want to make a big shout out to Bob, as he is not only a panelist, but he is a top-tier Patreon supporter of this podcast who sponsored this episode, so thank you very much, Bob.
You're welcome.
Next, don't press his Pop-O-Matic bubble or you'll be in trouble. It's Jim Zadzik.
Or sorry, because they're practically the same game, or maybe Parcheesi. I don't know.
True. Pop-O-Matic bubble has a completely different meaning in my community, and we're just going to leave it there. Next, we just found her in the study with a lead pipe. It's Joelle Bodecker.
Eric, it was Colonel Mustard, I swear.
Well, in that case, I have to ask you, pardon me, miss, do you have any Grey Poupon?
No.
And finally, we have an extra special guest for this episode. He wishes he could live in a real Candyland. Please welcome our children's board game subject matter expert, Elliot Zadzik. Hi, Elliot.
Hi.
So, Elliot, do you want to share with the listeners how old you are? That's entirely up to you.
Sure, I'm 11 years old.
He is 11 years old. As you may have guessed, he may or may not be the son of one of our panelists who shares the last name and the nephew of our Patreon sponsor. So all of the games discussed in this episode really are kid-tested and father-approved, so keep that. All right, so how does this work? Although this is a mini-sode, we did have a public poll of just about every children's board or card game we could think of. More than 70 people filled it out and picked their favorites. We ranked the games by popularity, added them to a bracket. Now we argue about it and insult each other, all for your amusement. Want to play along at home? Go to greatpopculturedebate.com and find the polls and brackets tab. There you'll find the listener bracket for this in every episode. Make a copy for yourself, fill it out, and see if your picks match up with ours. Before we start, I want to ask my panelists, what were some of the board or card games you suggested that you were upset did not make the bracket? And I'm going to start with Bob.
So the game that I wasn't upset that it didn't make it because I never anticipated that it would, there was this game called Mall Madness in the 80s/90s that Joelle knows. I knew that Joelle would be like, yes,
There's a clearance.
You've got a special clearance. Ching ching. I never had the game, but I always wanted it, but was afraid to ask for it because they'd be like, well, why is this little boy asking for a Mall Madness shopping game? But, in 2020, where are we, 2022, anybody can ask for a mall shopping game. Boys, girls, whatever. But I had a friend named Becky who had the game.
Of course,
and whenever I was at her house, I was like, oh, we're going to play Mall Madness. We need to play Mall Madness, and we need to play it now. So I wasn't upset that it didn't make it. Well, yeah, I'm upset it didn't make it, but I'm not surprised it didn't.
Okay.
That was hands down my favorite game of my childhood. You're absolutely
ching, ching.
right. Ching, ching.
Well, speaking of which, Joelle, were there games that you were upset didn't make it?
Oh, yeah. So, thank you for mentioning Mall Madness. That one somehow escaped my memory. It doesn't exist in my life anymore. I don't know what happened to it. But I left it in my closet of my childhood. That sounded sadder than I meant for it. So there's a couple things. There's a category of games that isn't on this list at all, and that's like the drawing and Pictionary games. So Pictionary itself would have been great on this list, I think, or some version of it. And then there's newer games like that. So there's Luck of the Draw. My niece and nephews love playing that game when they come over to my house. I would say, so we'll talk about one card game that did make the cut. And by card game, I mean ones that use an actual deck of cards. But there's so many other games I played as a kid. There's Solitaire, War, and Spit. And those games, vary from age range, but I played those all through my childhood. And then there's new games I also wanted to mention. So games that my niece and nephews play all the time that I don't think they've played more than half the games on this bracket, but they play the games I'm going to mention way more often throughout their childhood. They play Blockus. Have you guys heard of Blockus?
No, I've never heard of Blockus.
It's like a colors and shapes kind of a domino like matching sort of game.
Cool.
Sushi Go. It's sort of a
I love Sushi Go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Sushi Go is so good.
Yeah, and that's like another like matching kind of game. It's very popular with my 6-year-old niece. Spot It. That's another like matching game. It's full chaos. You just hit things in the middle of the table. Great for all ages. And then Set is a game I played back when I was probably Elliot's age, and that's still popular to this day. And all of these games have themed versions as well. But yeah, I just as nostalgia as this bracket is going to be, I was just wanted to make sure we talked about games that were created after 1983. So that's my snark for this episode.
I love it, and I do think this is the beginning. We're 100% going to do more game episodes as we go forward, tabletop, etc. I think the challenge is finding ways to kind of limit them, so that it's not just so overwhelming the number we could talk about. But I'm all for you bringing these to our attention, Joelle. If you're listening and you don't know what these are, like me, please check them out, and we will report back with more games in the future. So thank you, Jim. What about you?
Well, maybe we put the qualifiers like best classic children's game.
I think we should, because this is absolutely classic children's game, and maybe that's a good way to start it.
Well, what does our Patreon sponsor think?
Oh, that's true.
We could call it classic children's board game.
Great.
I just wanted to invite Elliot.
And Elliot and I could talk about a lot of different games if we're talking about more recent ones. He has a couple survival ones. We just played this new one called Ravine, where you have to survive a multiple number of nights and with all these different things that happen to you. It's kind of partially a role-playing game, but partially a board game. And then in our house, I think one that didn't make the list, but is a classic with our 5-year-old, is Apples to Apples Junior. Because it's just pictures, so you can kind of play along with the funny pictures and all that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Elliot, were there any others that your dad didn't mention that you were like, ugh, I love this game. Why isn't it on here?
I was actually going to say Apples to Apples Junior.
Oh.
I was really
Stole it.
that,
Sorry. Although he likes taking another card game and playing similarly with that also has pictures. Would you like to tell him that game?
What do you mean?
Oh, yeah. I love it. I love that game.
I like the Real Housewives edition of What Do You Meme. That's a good time. So that's a great one. Thank you, Elliot. There were a couple classic ones that I was surprised did not make it. And as Joelle was talking about the card game she played as a kid, one came to mind and I cannot remember what it's called. Someone tell me. You are swapping like grains, like flax.
Oh, it's Pit.
Pit. Okay.
Like,
yeah.
It's like the stock market pit type thing.
Yeah. And like it's oats and wheat and like flax.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is flax? And now, of course, as a 40-something, I understand how important flax is for dietary fiber. But as a child, I didn't really have that awareness. So that's when I'll put on there. Sorry, didn't make our top 16, which surprised me.
Yeah.
That's a kind of like traditional board game. The Game of Life didn't, although I will always say, like, I never really liked the Game of Life. I was like, even that game seemed depressing to me as a kid. Like, so like I have very little choice.
The thing I liked about the Game of Life was the pieces, and anytime we could put the little pieces into the little cars, I was there for it. I was on the spot. That was what I liked about it. No interest otherwise.
The thing about the Game of Life, and I was having this conversation, I don't think I was having it with you, Eric, but I was having it with somebody, is like, what is the Game of Life like today? Like, if I purchased it, is it the same as it ever was? Because it's like, I've got the blue pegs and the pink pegs.
Is it still binary?
To represent the children, but you know, boys and girls are not the only option at this point, right? There's gender neutral, there's non-binary, there's whatever, you know. So I was curious as to whether or not they still approach it from that binary of like the blue and the pink, and is it build your family, and is there same-sex couples? Because there should be. Because, you know, the Game of Life is, I don't know how old now, I'm going to guess 50, 60, 70 years old, I'm going to guess, right?
That would be my
it has to be from the 40s or 30s.
It's got to be outdated, and I'm just curious as to what it's like today.
Well, working like the gig economy and like all the other other things about life, right? Like it kind of follows one specific path, right?
You've become an Instacart shopper.
You've been furloughed. Yeah,
exactly.
I feel like that requires some additional investigation on behalf of these panelists. So we will report back on that. I was surprised chess didn't make it. Like, chess is a game that kids play. Like,
my
legit.
nephew loves chess. That's actually when I asked my sister-in-law what his favorite game is, because he was at camp. She was like, chess. Absolutely his hands down favorite game. And I was like, oh, okay. Whoops. Yeah, like, wasn't expecting it.
Smart children play chess. I wasn't one of them.
No,
but there are smart children that do. Elliot, do you play chess?
I have never played chess. I really want to learn, but I've never.
Oh,
well, there we go, Jim. That's something to know for the future.
Yes.
Have you played checkers?
Yes, I love checkers.
Oh yeah.
I was surprised that didn't make the list. That is a very kid-friendly game. I loved checkers growing up.
Yeah. The other one is completely different from everything else, but I'm going to name it. I was surprised the Pokemon trading card game did not make it. Like,
that's a great point.
It's none of the trading card games. There are many. I think Pokemon is the most kid-friendly of them and has been around now for over 20 years. Like, I legitimately, like, Bob, you and I played it back in Lafayette. Like, back with like the OG,
so,
like
2005, or I'm gonna guess. Yeah. And Elliot's brother was collecting the cards for a long time, but did he ever actually play? Elliot?
Well, I was going to say from our experience with Elliot and Colin, it's not about actually playing the game. It's just about collecting them.
Sure.
Catching them all.
Yeah, catching them all. Did you enjoy playing Pokemon, though? Did you ever play it, Elliot?
Yeah, I play with my cousins sometimes because they got this box of like Pokemon. Like, it's a game that you like set. It comes with a board to like teach you how to do it.
Yeah.
If you don't know.
Yep. Because it's complicated. It is. Like, Bob and I were playing. I was just like, what is doing what now? Like, I mean, it's not quite Magic the Gathering, but it's not super intuitive either.
Yeah.
So that is my argument for things that I was surprised didn't make it. Anybody have any others, or shall we go into these debates?
Oh, I'm anxious to get into these debates.
Let's do it. So with that, the first up, the majority of the panel prefers Ultimate 1-Seed Clue, but Bob and Elliot want to see what's in your hand by preferring 4-Seed Go Fish. Jim, crack the case of why Clue should move forward. Bob, try to get us on the line for Go Fish. I'll have Bob go first.
Okay, so I get it. Clue is this ultimate, like, 1 seed on our bracket, and everybody on this, am I the only person me and Elliot. Elliot and I are the only two who have chosen Go Fish, right? But for me, when it comes down to this game, Go Fish, for me, it is very simple. The rules are simple. You can play with a Go Fish deck, or you can just play with a regular deck of cards. So from that perspective, it's easy to acquire, easy to just pick up and do. You don't need to set anything up. It's just at your disposal at any given moment. I think they're short hands, short rounds. You kind of can go through the first round and just get into the next in maybe 5-10 minutes a hand, which is great for kids, I think, because there's that, in some points you have that attention span problem where a kid, you might be playing with a group of children, and after that first round, one might go off and do something, but you can still play with the rest. It's just got those quick, easy rounds. It teaches you learn something of matching and pairing and memory. I'm not going to say you don't necessarily learn anything with Clue, because I'm sure that you do as well.
You learn how to get away with killing people.
You have to learn how to get away with murder,
right?
With Viola Davis.
It's an important skill set. I'm not,
But it was made, like I said, it's just made with a simple deck of cards, and that's all you really need. And it's simple. You just ask a player for a card. Do you have it? And they have it or not, and they tell you to go fish. It couldn't be simple. You can play with multiple age brackets. When it comes to Clue, I think it's a little bit more sophisticated of a rule set for sure. Older children need to be the ones to play it. It's harder for a younger child, like 5 or below, to play it per se. And I think that's where I'll leave that for right now, but I'd love to hear the Clue argument, Jim.
Yes, Jim, take it away.
Oh, you learn a lot in Clue. There's a lot of skills to build there for a child. You have, the whole thing is more based less on the murder part, but more on paying attention and putting together hints of things and noticing maybe like if someone asks for a certain card, and there's a lot of strategy there too. And so I'd say like Elliot and I have been having a lot of fun. I've been having a lot of fun watching him learn and notice like, oh, well, that gives it away to me too, even though it's between these two other people. And I think that that's a big shift in the type of game in a child's kind of growth. Go Fish is great. It's great. You know, I've probably played it about 400 times with my 3 children. And so, yeah, it is a good starter game. I agree with that for a toddler or something that you can do that. You can't play with a toddler, but we're not talking about best toddler game, are we?
That's a great point. And
we're talking about best children's game.
And children
Classic.
go up. Children go up to, you know, age 11. I'm going to say 12. Before teens is when I'm considering children. I will say, on behalf of Go Fish, fishes are high in omega-3 fatty acids. They're heart healthy. So it's got that going for it. Elliot, where are you on this one?
I think for Go Fish, I think it's better than Clue because it like the main idea of Clue is about murder, and children shouldn't like. Ian just asked me the other day, "Can I murder you?" And I'm like, "No."
Oh.
No, you're not Cain and Abel. That's not appropriate. So a great point that it's perhaps a little mature for kids. Joelle, where are you on this?
So I would love to counter your argument, Elliot, because what I think they've done with Clue over the last 20, 30 years is they've made lots of variations on it. So if parents aren't comfortable talking about murder, which, you know, no.
Who is?
They've made a lot of themed versions of Clue. For example, the Big Bang Theory. This is a terrible example because who cares about the Big Bang Theory? But in that particular one, you are not trying to figure out who murdered one of the people in the Big Bang Theory. You're trying to figure out who. I don't even know what the particular issue is, but someone made Sheldon very upset, and you're just trying to figure out who upset Sheldon. So a lot of the themed versions, you're just trying to solve a mystery, and it's not necessarily a murder.
In Golden Girls Clue, it's who ate the last slice of cheesecake.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those variations have gotten very popular as well. And so ultimately the gameplay is exactly the same, but now you get to play around with different themes and rooms, and it's still Clue. It's still the delightful gameplay of Clue. The pieces look very similar. I think Clue has decades of gameplay. I didn't play it for years because I was in college and I didn't have a board with me. And then I went off, I got my own apartment. The first thing I did, I got a few board games. Clue was absolutely the first board game I bought because it felt right. It's one of my favorite games. So Clue is my vote.
It's my vote too. We played it all the time as kids, and I come from 4 brothers. There's 4 years between each of us, so there's a wide range of ages involved in that. And I don't think all 4 of us ever actually played it at the same time. But even like the younger players can kind of muddle their way through it just by randomly guessing, and the older players can actually like use deductive reasoning and be like, "Well, I know I have these cards, and I know he showed me that card," and it like teaches you complex thought processes, which. Is that a kid's game? I don't know. I still think it is. It's just a more advanced kids game. So with 3 votes to 2, Clue will advance. And
Elliot, that didn't work out for us.
That's okay. Are you all right, Elliot, if we move Clue forward?
Yeah.
Thank you for being a good partner. I'm
not going to be a good partner.
No, but we knew that.
We knew that. Next, a unanimous victory for 3-seed Monopoly, which didn't need a get out of jail free card to advance over 2-seed Mousetrap. Next, the majority of the panel is trying to line things up for 1-seed Connect 4, but Joelle wants to build a case for 4-seed Jenga. Elliot, why do you have Connect 4's number? Joelle, carefully push us to take Jenga higher. I'm going to have Elliot go first.
I think Connect 4 should be the best because it's easy to set up and it's easy to put away for children to do. And Jenga, it's always take longer to set up and put away. It's always a nightmare. So
it's so true.
Yeah, it's easier to play. Well, yeah, it's a fun game.
Which one, Jenga or Connect 4?
Connect 4.
Yeah. Joelle, talk to me about Jenga.
Elliot, you are not wrong. And I played Connect 4 what was that stat, Jim? 400 times in my childhood. And Jenga, you can't play 400 times. I will admit that. It does take too much time to set up. I want to defend Jenga just because it's a sort of game that you don't forget. It's an unforgettable game. You if you've ever played it and you've ever had a victory in Jenga, it sits with you for life. It takes patience. It takes time. It rewards the patient. If you've ever played some of the variations on it, you may have had some uproarious times, like Jenga Truth or Dare, for example.
Oh, I don't know anything about that.
Oh, that's where you write dares on it, but that's probably more for adults, so I won't get into it. But there are also Jenga Junior, where they've made the blocks bigger and made it more possible. So it's not 54 blocks; it's fewer, and I think that they're maybe easier to slide the blocks around because they're maybe plastic. I don't know if they've made it that much different, but they're at least bigger. But yeah, I think Jenga offers you, a different kind of reward of skill. Connect Four certainly offers reward of strategy, so I'm not going to deny that win if we have to go with Connect Four. But I did want to defend Jenga because it holds a certain place in board game, or I guess these are both very similar. It's like block game or something. It's not on a board.
Right. Neither one is technically a board game, but they're both obviously games that children play.
Yeah.
And it is, you're right. It's interesting. I hadn't thought of that they are kind of similar in the, like, you're trying to advance your place, but also simultaneously trying to block the other person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're both sabotage friendly,
I do love
in
a
different
sabotage.
Ways. Yeah.
Bob, where are you on this?
I'm with Connect Four. I love Jenga. I think Jenga's a great game. I think Connect Four edges out just a little bit for me because I think there's a strategy involved with both of these, or at least kind of you have to eyeball the Jenga tower to kind of figure out what might be the best. But I think from a Connect Four perspective, there's that strategy of thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead to try to make sure that you're matching and being able to get the match before somebody else. I think there's a little bit more strategy involved, which is something that kids can take away from that one. Mm-hmm. Other than like pull out the block and oops, comes tumbling down. I mean, that's fun for sure. But I also get really frustrated with how the adults have co-opted it to this bar game these days. And I'm just like, oh, this is for children and we're taking it in bars.
I saw Connect Four at a bar. They put it in the middle of a table. Actually, it was Bob, it was in DC. It was like an escape room place, actually.
Well, that's an escape room place, so I'll give it a pass. But anyway, I'm going to pick Connect Four.
The bar Jenga tends to be made with 2x4s, right?
No, the ones I've seen are still just regular Jenga boards.
There's like big Jenga, there's like medium sized Jenga, there's tiny Jenga.
My issue with like the big 2x4 Jenga is like people can get seriously hurt. Like, you get clobbered in the head with one of those top pieces.
So someone pulls out a piece and just smacks the person behind them with it.
Yeah, that's intense. Jim, where are you?
That's another similarity. That the giant Jenga. Ellie and I our family goes to a couple places that have giant Connect Four games out. So apparently these both are really good in jumbo version as well.
You can scale them up. Apparently,
scale them up. Yep.
This was a good, a good combo here.
Yeah, I think Jenga is fun with a larger group. I think like the when it collapses, it's a lot funnier and more of an event. But Connect Four is, I agree with the argument about strategy, and you can kind of plot your way, and I think that's what makes a really great game.
And it's also a game you can play with just 2 people, and it actually works great. Mm-hmm. Like, you only need 2 people for Connect Four, whereas with Jenga, if it's 2 people, I don't know if it's as entertaining. But
that's true.
I am voting for Connect Four as well, but thank you, Joelle, for a very impassioned plea on behalf of Jenga.
Sure.
Next, Joelle is again the lone holdout, preferring 2-seed Guess Who, while the rest of us are sweet on 3-seed Candyland. Joelle, describe why Guess Who should flip its weight around 2. I will ruin my dinner by biting into Candyland. Joelle, why don't you go first?
Okay, so this one is... I'm shooting myself in the foot. This one is less about Guess Who and more about why I don't want to defend Candyland. Guess Who, I did play this a lot as a kid. My grandparents had it at their house, and every time I was at their house, I demanded someone play Guess Who with me. Little did I know, this was not a very adult-friendly game. They hated this game. But as a kid, I thought this game was great. I thought it was really fun to try to figure out how to describe people and how to, learn, facial features and, describe it and giggle about, noses and eye colors. And I don't know. I thought it was great. Years later, I look back at that game and I was like, boy, I bet all the adults were bored. So definitely very limited age range for Guess Who. But I loved it. I learned in my research for Guess Who that they've made a lot of versions. I'm loving all the versions all these games have that, the last few years now that Hasbro owns everything. They have like Finding Dory Guess Who, so that's fun. So you're probably guessing fish and colors, and it's less.
And then forgetting them.
And then forgetting them. But at least you can like ditch the very uncomfortable race card with Guess Who, and you can play around with fish and animals and stuff. So if you can get your hands on a non-human version of Guess Who, I think that would make this game a lot better for kids.
Sure.
In 2022. I will just say my discomfort with Candyland is just how simple it is and how bored the children in my life are with that game after the very first time any of them played it. So I have to put that out there. But that's my pre-comment on Candyland. But Eric, I know you have a huge defense for it, and this is such a popular nostalgia game, and I also know why this is going to go ahead. So
I do. I looked up facts. I did this amazing research with this thing called Wikipedia. Get ready, folks. Yeah. It's about 2 seconds, but it's all actually very interesting. I will say before I get into that, they never actually officially made it, but I am an owner of Guess Ru, which is a handmade RuPaul's Drag Race version of Guess Who, made for me by a member of our podcast panel, Curtis Creekmore. So you're looking at the queens from the show and you have to like play Guess Who, but with Drag Race queens.
Awesome.
It's amazing. Highly recommended. And I think you can get kits for it online. But I'm here to talk about Candyland. And as Joelle correctly pointed out, the thing about Candyland is that there are no choices, there is no strategy. Literally, it only requires following directions, which explains why my niece and nephew found it very difficult to play when they were children. I have vivid memories of babysitting Addison, who I don't think listens to this podcast, but literally we'd be playing Candyland and she would be like, "Can I see the cards?" "Sure." And she would sit there and she'd find exactly the cards that she wanted and she would put them on the deck and then put like one card on top for me. And she'd be like, "Okay, you go." "Okay." And then she'd be like, "Oh, look, I'm going to Princess Frostine." I was like, okay, that's how this is going to work. But whatever. She had a good time. Roughly 1 million copies of Candyland are sold every year by Hasbro. And it was first released in 1949. It soon eclipsed the legendary Uncle Wiggily as Milton Bradley's top seller. Milton Bradley was later bought out by Hasbro. And a couple fun facts about Candyland I did not know. The game did not always include characters. Mr. Mint and Grandma Nut and the like were introduced in the 1980s. In 2002, Queen Frostine was renamed Princess Frostine. The Molasses Swamp became the Chocolate Swamp, and Princess Lolly was demoted to just Lolly. So there was clearly some major drama going on in the Candy Kingdom, and I'm going to need that season of Game of Thrones. But Candyland is an iconic children's game. It is for all ages. I'm sure the older kids could get bored, but like it's still like a fanciful and very like visually stimulating game for children. Elliot, where are you on this?
Well, I love Candyland a lot. Ian, doesn't play correctly all the time. He just flies his character all over the board and has a blast for like an hour. So it's great and it's fun. I think I'm going to go with Candyland.
All right. Bob, what about you?
I'm going to stick with Candyland too. And I've experienced that with Ian before, where you're just flying all over the board, but you can still play while he's flying all over the board. And you just say, "You win. You won, Ian. You won." While Elliot's like, "No, I won."
Exactly. The joys of being an older brother, right, Elliot?
Yep.
And Jim, how about you?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm distracted. I'm looking up Uncle Wiggily, the game.
Yeah, it's a great game, isn't it?
When we were kids, we played it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've never heard of this game. This is
it's like one of the OG board games.
Yeah, right. Look at that. Anyways, I think Candyland should go forward, but I Guess Who was a lot of fun too, and there are those variations. However, I'd say we've had the Star Wars one come into our house twice in the past, and it's never as big of a hit as the original for some reason. Maybe because they're just the characters, and it's a little, it's not like different types of droids. It's like very drastically different characters. But I do love the idea that you can slide. Yeah.
Is like Emperor Palpatine in there? Can you be like, does he look like a raisin? Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. They're cartoon versions, so absolutely.
Amazing. So it sounds like we are 4 for Candyland, and that means Guess Who's Out. Sorry, Joelle, but you did a good job defending it.
All good.
Next, it's Elliot on the out, says he thinks 4-seed Twister has all the right moves to advance, while the rest of us want to slip 2-seed Battleship under the radar. Elliot, put your best foot on blue and push for Twister. Jim, make sure you lock in your strategy before you fire your salvo in favor of Battleship. I know. Listen, there's an actual dad on this podcast. I should not be using the dad jokes, but I'm here. Elliot, do you want to go first and talk about Twister?
Sure. So Twister is really fun, and it is easy to play, and you don't have a million pieces everywhere. And anyone can do it if you stretch far enough. It can be painful if you fall over. I have fallen, and it is painful, but it's fun, and it doesn't take as long. So I love games like that because, like, if you want to do it in a short period of time, you do it in a short period of time. But if you want to do it longer, you can do it longer, but then like do like the different rounds and then stop at a certain point. And I just really think Twister's easier and more fun than Battleship.
Well, it's certainly a faster game. You're absolutely right about that. I hadn't thought about it, but like Battleship can go on for a really long time, and Twister's pretty quick. So yeah, as old people like myself, Twister can be very painful, even if you don't fall over, Elliot. It can just be, well, I can't get up now. So enjoy it while you can. Jim, talk to me about Battleship.
I think those are good arguments. You got the it does get the wiggles out. You can have them do something active and full of energy, and it is simple enough to understand. I think those are all positives. Elliot, a lot of your arguments seem to be about how much you dislike cleaning it up, which seems accurate. Well, see, Battleship, it does hold the pieces if you want to keep them in the little containers. Actually, I did a little bit of Wikipedia looking at this, and it actually never occurred to me, but you could just play Battleship on graph paper. You could do a paper version. Like, I need the actual game. No, you can actually do it that way. Again, I think it's similar to things I've said before. There's some strategy, there's elimination, where you place them, as well as paying attention when you find a hit. I think that it's such a classic image. You can think of the picture on the box and the commercials and things like that too. And those two kids are just having a blast playing Battleship. I would pick up Battleship over Twister as a kid. Twister, you have to have some willing participants who want to get twisting all around, I suppose.
Yeah, also it would mean actually touching my brothers, and there's no way that would happen that wouldn't end in someone getting punched in the face.
Seriously.
I was nonstop. Like, if you came anywhere remotely near the bubble of like personal space, someone was getting a punch in the face. Bob, where are you?
I haven't really broken down like how I look at some of these games from a rubric perspective of like what I was looking at as to what made a children's game for me. Like, for me, when I looked at things like simple rules that's easily approachable by kids, parents are willing to play it with children, or children would be willing to play it alone by themselves with one another, right? That It could be approachable by anybody, and also like kind of any age too, right? That you can be a 4 or 5 year old and a 9 or 10 year old, 11 year old, and play together. And you learn skills, I think, is also an important part of any game. That it's not something silly that doesn't teach you anything like Mall Madness. I guess it taught me how to use a credit card. But so it's funny because this matchup, I'm picking Battleship over Twister, although Twister fits more into that rubric. Like, I was applying that earlier with Go Fish versus Clue, right? Like, I think that's why I would have chosen Go Fish over that. But I think Battleship has a more cultural cachet out there, I suppose. It is more of I think it's a game people will think of more or before Twister, because when you say game, I think people most logically think like board game, tabletop. They don't often think of like a yard game, Twister, things like that. Also, the Twister mat gets all twisted up, and sometimes that makes it difficult to play, and actually, sometimes actually works against you to make you fall or whatever. And that always was really frustrating. And it's a pandemic, so you shouldn't play Twister.
It is funny. How have we not had an advancement in Twister mat technology in the 60 some odd years since Twister has been around? That is surprising. I will also say, in case he's listening, Patreon supporter John Boudreau specifically said to me, "Hi, John. How is Twister a board game? Like, how is this on your poll?" And I was like,
the spinner's on a board.
Yeah, that is fair. The spinner's on a board. It is a broad interpretation of board game, and I won't lie about that. My question, does anybody know the answer? Was Twister originally invented for children, or was it an adult party game? I don't know the answer to that.
I have the thing open right now, and I will get you that answer.
Joelle has the receipts as always.
To the point you were making too, though, while she's doing that, right? It's best children's game bracket. That's what we're working through right now. It's not best children's board game. Jenga's not a board game. Go Fish is not a board game. It's a card game, right? Like, yes. It's just game in general. So I see the point. It's not a board game, but technically the mat is a big board, I guess.
What have you got for me, Joelle?
Conceived a shoe polish promotion as a game with a mat on the floor with people serving as the playing pieces.
So you're looking at people's shoes.
And the game was called Pretzel.
Really?
Oh, Pretzel. That sounds fun.
Oh. So
that's the game I want to pick.
It was for selling shoes, so my guess is they envisioned it for adults, and yeah.
Interesting.
And for men specifically.
Sure, because women's shoes in the 50s would have torn that thing to pieces.
Yeah, no, we don't want heels on there.
No. Joelle, where are you on this one?
This is actually kind of fun because both of these games I never got to play much as a child. Battleship, because my two older brothers monopolized the heck out of that game, and I just got to watch. We had a Yiddish term for kibitzing, and I was the kibitzer. I would just harass both of them while they played the game, and go, no, I wouldn't put it there, or and pretend like I knew what they were actually doing. So that was me playing Battleship, just being obnoxious. And then Twister, I didn't play much because I didn't want to be that close to people, and I don't want to be near bodies that much. And even at the young age, I had that much insight to know that was gross. So, I never played Twister. So both of these games were just not that close to me, but Battleship was definitely more fun in my history. And my brothers loved the heck out of it from age, 5 and 8, 7 and 10. So I know that would be their vote for this for sure. So Battleship.
And I am also picking Battleship here. I think it taught you again that like how to think strategically, and like you can't just play by like randomly guessing, but like as you get older and you're like, okay, like where do I start that's going to like maximize my chances of hitting something? And like there really is a thought process that goes behind Battleship. There's a skill set to it that you have to build, and I think that's a great life lesson. So I'm also giving it to Battleship. Elliot did an excellent job defending Twister. I hope you're okay with it being eliminated.
I guess.
Oh, you did a really good job. Next up, the majority of the panel thinks that 2-seed Scrabble is just about letter perfect, but Bob and Elliot want to slide into the DMs of 3-seed Chutes and Ladders. I'll explain why Scrabble is the word on the street. Bob, try to scale the bracket with Chutes and Ladders. Bob, I'll have you go first.
So I was looking at this one and I was like, Scrabble or Chutes and Ladders? They're both great games. I like both of them. Which is the one I would play more? Definitely Chutes and Ladders, because it's a board game that I can play with other folks that don't know how to spell. Let's start there. But it's a simple game. It's up and down a board based on. It's not unlike Candyland in a lot of ways, because you're just moving across the board, and if you land on a ladder, you get to climb. If you land on a chute or a slide, you get to slide back down. It's based off of an Indian game, which was Snakes and Ladders.
Yeah.
Back, in like 2nd century, like AD, like that sort of stuff back in India. but it's a simple race upward based on luck from a dice roll. It teaches you counting and observation. It's simple, easy, quick to play. You get that satisfaction of hitting that really tall ladder, and you're like, look at this, I'm at the top now because I hit this tall ladder. And then obviously you need to avoid the big slide to fall back down. But there's just that satisfaction that you can get from that. And many ages can play. Family will play together. I think Scrabble has a disadvantage, in my opinion, based on this, because it's the spelling game, I think, right? And words aren't fun for everyone. And certainly for smaller children, it's not going to be the go-to for them. It certainly will teach them spelling and teach them words, but I think that when we talk about kind of more of a classic, traditional style children's game, I think Chutes and Ladder takes it.
You made some really good arguments there. Elliot, I have a question. Do you play Scrabble?
I don't that often, but I have before.
Do your brothers play it, or is it just you because you're the oldest?
Well, we have actually a Scrabble Junior, which is pretty good. It's like easier words for littler kids.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think Bob makes a good point that Scrabble can be very challenging, I would say, for anybody under the age of maybe 10, maybe a little bit younger. But I think like 10 is when you start to really be able to play Scrabble. You're saying that your younger brothers can play Scrabble Junior, though, right, Elliot?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bob makes some excellent points here. I do have some facts about Scrabble that I'll share. 150 million sets of Scrabble have been sold worldwide, and roughly 1/3 of American and 1/2 of British homes have a Scrabble set. The game was invented in 1938 by a man named Alfred Butts. So literally, Scrabble came from Mr. Butts. Do I need to go on, or did I get your vote from that, Elliot?
You got my vote.
All right, Mr. Butts. But it didn't become popular until 1952 when the president of Macy's played it while on vacation and was shocked his store did not sell it. After that, he placed a huge order, and it became a must-have for American homes. Fun fact, the game had been previously rejected by both Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley. So, whoops. That all said, I think Bob makes an excellent point that this is not best classic board game. It's best classic children's game. And I'm wondering if maybe between Scrabble and Chutes and Ladders is unquestionably the better children's game. I mean, without question. And I will, the only counter I have to that is Scrabble was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame in 2004. So it is considered a toy.
Lots of these games on this bracket were.
But Chutes and Ladders was never inducted so far.
Yeah.
No, it was not, and neither was Snakes and Ladders. But the other point I have on that too is you're a younger kid. If I'm going to play with Elliot, he's at an automatic disadvantage based on vocabulary, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think no offense, Elliot, you have a wonderful vocabulary, but like, I just think from a smaller child is obviously going to have a greater likelihood of being able to win Chutes and Ladders than they are over Scrabble. So that's another piece of the puzzle that I factored in there.
It's a really good point. And in the words of Naomi Smalls, life's not fair. But Joelle, what were you going to say?
So I think representation of a simple, with what Wikipedia calls a simple racing board game, we have Candyland, and that is the better of these two. Chutes and Ladders didn't have the theme. It doesn't have Gumdrop Mountain. It doesn't have all the fun characters. For me, Chutes and Ladders was the far inferior version of this game. I never liked Chutes and Ladders as a kid. I think I've played it twice in my lifetime. Scrabble, on the other hand, even though my grandmother kicked my butt 1,000 times, I loved being able to play this game with her. I learned so much by playing this game with her. Every time she whipped out that dictionary, I was like, oh, come on. But like, it didn't matter. It was fun to be able to play with her. I learned that you had to memorize those 2-letter words. Like, none of that mattered. It didn't matter that I was terrible. I liked that I could play. And then when I went and played with my friends, I then had the advantage because I had just played with my grandmother and I had learned by playing with her. And then, when you play with someone your own age, it's a lot different, right? Then that becomes much easier to play. I think playing with adults, for sure, this game has a deep imbalance. And if you have a nice grandparent, maybe they won't try to whip your butt, but whatever. My grandmother, she's the best. I have nostalgia for this game. What are you going to do? Everyone brings something different to this argument, but I think Scrabble, Eric, to your point, it's in everyone's home. Whether you play it every year, play it every week, play it every 15 years, people love Scrabble. This game is the word game for every home. I don't know how it isn't part of a childhood, even if you play it every once in a while. It's a better game. I don't know.
It's a great argument. I had not thought about the generational component of it. And you're right. I used to play with my grandpa. I never won. I was never going to win, but I learned. And I did learn words through playing this with him. So there's the educational component. Jim, where are you?
Joelle, you made that very hard because I was ready to change my vote. And now you've got me back thinking about it. These are tough because they are very different. I think that you're right. One you would play with an adult and it would be that kind of experience. And Chutes and Ladders, you could let the kids play themselves. It's that simple. But the Candyland argument before kind of got me leaning towards Chutes and Ladders because Scrabble is limited to those who can spell, and not every kid is a word nerd like most of us probably are, and the idea of spelling for fun might not be in everyone's book. So I think I'm actually going to change my vote to Chutes and Ladders because I think that's better as a children's game, all encompassing the age of a child.
So, Elliot, this is exciting for you. You get to make the decision over who advances here. It's your call. Do you want Scrabble or Chutes and Ladders? Either answer is fine.
Well, Scrabble's fun, and I love that it has a Scrabble Junior, but Chutes and Ladders is easy. It's fun. I think I'm going to go with Chutes and Ladders.
All right. So good job. The Chutes and Ladders team flipped it. So Chutes and Ladders, well played. That is a game in and of itself. So well done. We advanced Chutes and Ladders to round 2. Another unanimous victory as 1 seed Uno played a draw 4 wild on Cavity Sam and 4 seed Operation. Decades later, I can still hear and feel that buzzer in my wrenched ankle, my butterflies in the stomach, and my spare rib. And finally, in round 1, the majority of the panel wants Dice Baby and is rolling with 2 seed Yahtzee. But Bob and myself want to keep a handle on 3 seed Hungry Hippos. Joelle, why is Yahtzee to die for? I will explain why all these years later. I still marble at hippos. I'll have Joelle go first.
Grown.
I'm bringing the big dad energy to this episode. Joelle, it's you.
I have to tell you, I don't have a huge defense for Yahtzee. I tried so hard. I don't actually know why I picked it. Hungry Hippos is a fun game. The worst thing about Hungry Hippos is that game falls apart very quickly.
Yes.
It creaks, it crunches. It's fun to play for about 10 seconds. That's Hungry Hippos. But boy, is it fun to play for those 10 seconds. Yahtzee, it's really good for teaching math.
Mm-hmm.
Get to shake those dice. They get to have the smallest itty bitty bit of strategy. You get to fill out a piece of paper with some dice on it. I don't actually remember enjoying the heck out of this game. I just remember thinking Hungry Hippos was loud and it fell apart, and that's why I didn't vote for it. That's it. That's my defense.
Things that are loud and fall apart is my aesthetic as a 44-year-old. So
I'm going to tell you right now, I could flip. So please go for it, Eric. Just jump in.
So I hope you're ready. Again, it's the Wikipedia special on Hungry Hippos. Number 1, I identify with Hungry Hippos. Not only because it was released the same year that I was born, 1978, but also because I am also a fat slob who repeats himself and can't stop gobbling. We have children present, so I'm going to leave it there. You can fill in the blanks. But did you know that the individual hippos have names?
No.
Yes. So originally, the pink/purple hippo was Lizzie, the orange hippo was Henry, the green was Homer, and the yellow was Harry. And then in the 2000s, the hippos got a makeover and new names. Now the blue or pink, depends on which version you're playing, is called Sweetie Potamus.
Stop it.
I swear to you. The green is Vegipotamus. The orange is Hungry Hippo, briefly called Pickypotamus, which I think is much better because Hungry Hippo is a very, very boring name for a character in a game called Hungry Hippos. Like, obviously he's hungry. It's right there. It's not subtext. It's text. And the yellow is Bottomless Potamus. So now I know I have to avoid using that one in the future. The game has been referenced in The Simpsons, Mystery Science Theater 3000, Donnie Darko, Toy Story 3, Space Force, and The After Party is a pop culture juggernaut. And it is a sister game to Elephant, which I was not even aware was a game that existed, Mousetrap, and Gator Golf. What sister game does Yahtzee have? Craps? Like, that's what I got. So that is my defense of Hungry Hippos. I will concede, not only is it loud and fall apart, but like, we lost the marbles within hours. Like by like month 2, you'd be like, "Oh, can we play Hungry Hippos?" And like, we have 3 marbles.
One of the strategies we had for it was like, "Oh, don't use the yellow one because it doesn't, advance forward anymore, right?" Like, "Oh, my friend will use the yellow one, so they lose." Like that. That was how we played Hungry Hippos.
So you relied on Bottomless Potamus to not be able to seal the deal.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the gay community. Bob, where are you on this one?
I'm with Hungry Hippos. Joelle mentioned like it's fun for the 30 seconds that it lasts. It's fun. It's frantic. It's like fast, run, like do it as fast as you can. Like there's no other game I think on this list right now at this point that's anything like this, right?
Yeah, pure chaos.
Where there's that kinetic energy to it and all of those different things. So it's just a lot of fun, high energy, and kind of has that thrill, that exhilaration. So I think it's a better game over Yahtzee as I push my glasses up the bridge of my nose saying the word Yahtzee.
Fair enough. Jim, where are you?
Well, for me, it is a nostalgic thing. I played a lot with my grandparents as a kid, Yahtzee. And, but I agree with again, weird pairing. These two are very different. I would say that Yahtzee does have companion games in the sense that it teaches kids like basically how cards, many card games work in terms of, poker or gin rummy or something like that, so the different ways you would combine suits that I think I learned a lot of that through Yahtzee, the idea of, 4 of a kind and things like that basic aspect. But Hungry Hippos was a lot of fun too, but I'm going to stick with Yahtzee.
Okay. So guess what, Elliot? You get to make the decision again on what advances. I love this power position for you. Which one of these 2 games should go on to round 2?
Well, I have never played Yahtzee, so this is going to be hard.
I think you have.
When?
Probably when you were real little. I probably was like,
maybe.
You got to play this because I played it as a kid. And
you must love this.
I'm going to have to play it sometime soon. I'm going to have to play it. And I've played Hungry Hippos a couple times, so I'm going to go with that one. It's Hungry Hippos, sorry. It's fun. It's easy. I say that every time, I know, but
that's okay.
Honestly, Elliot, that's why you're here, is you've got the kids' perspective, right? Like we're all old and 80% dust. So we can only remember what it was like to play these games as a kid. Like you're actually doing it now and you're like, it's fun and it's easy. I like it. So that's great. So you're going with Hungry Hippos.
Yep.
All right, so that's going to advance to round 2, and that is it for round 1. We're going to take a break to set up an obscenely elaborate trap for a mouse. We will be right back after these messages. Welcome back to round 2 of our best children's game debate. Before we get to round 2, let's discuss how listeners can open the door to their mystery dates, that means our panelists, by finding you on social media. Bob, how do people get in touch with you?
Well, you can find me at DisNerdBob on Twitter and Instagram.
Lovely. Jim?
You can find me on Twitter at JCZAD.
Great. Joelle?
And you can't find my son anymore.
Okay, that's fair.
But you could tweet at me and I'll relay it to him.
Perfect. Thank you.
If you want to find me, I'm at Joelle TB on Twitter. If you want to find my Animal Crossing podcast, where we lately talk about when we cross with animals rather than the video game, it's the Pocket Pod at most of the social medias, and our podcast is just called Pocket Pod.
Love it. And you should absolutely check that out. As for me, you should definitely follow at Great Pop Culture Debate on Instagram and at culture_debate on Twitter. But feel free to follow at Eric Rezniak on Instagram or Twitter. That's ERICREZ as in zebra, S as in snake, N as in Nancy, YAK. And actually, as you hear this now, we should be having the TikToks for many months. And we're at Great Pop Culture Debate on TikTok. So please check us out over there for our off-the-cuff reviews of various pop culture things that we love, or sometimes maybe don't so much love. With that,
saying the word TikTok just made my hip hurt.
I know. I need
were you playing
Gay.
Twister? Were you playing Twister, Bob?
I know.
No.
Takes me back. Where's my prunes? With that being said, yes, you're gonna say something, Jim?
Being a Patreon sponsored episode, I think it's worth probably mentioning that all of us are pretty active on the Discord for the Patreon sponsor.
Oh,
absolutely, yes.
Oh,
so
yeah.
if you don't know, our Patreons who support us at the $10 a month level or higher get to access the Great Pop Culture Debate Patreon channel, where all of our panelists interact, talk about what's going on in pop culture, talk about the show, just talk about literally anything. Yes, everybody on this episode, besides Elliot, who's not allowed, is very active on that, and we would love to have you interact with us as well. Many of our Patreons on there, and it's a great way to get to know us. So please subscribe if you're not already at patreon.com. So let's move on to round 2 of the debates. First up, it's Clue versus Monopoly, and I believe it may be unanimous in favor of Clue. Let's go around the board and see if there have been any new developments in this case, or if it'll make your rent skyrocket. So I'm going to start with Bob.
Oh, so I railed against Clue in the first round, but I think I'm going to give it the edge over Monopoly for right now.
Okay.
But we'll go around and maybe we talk some more.
Yeah. Elliot, which one do you like here, Clue or Monopoly?
I think I'm going to go with Clue because Monopoly is just super long sometimes.
I would say every time. I've never played a game of Monopoly that is not hours long.
Yeah.
Literally ever. Jim.
Oh, Monopoly takes so long. And I am personally scarred by Bob from in college.
Oh, stop.
I've been waiting basically at every episode to bring this up at some point, that him and some of our friends decided that you don't just play Monopoly, you play Cutthroat Monopoly.
Love it.
And if you get the dice to the next person before they notice that you're on their spot, then you don't have to pay.
Ooh.
And
that's an actual rule.
No, I didn't agree to it.
Is it written in somewhere?
It is. It's in the rules that if it goes on to the next player and the player who owns that property didn't notice, and you don't have to pay the rent. The trick is you just need to get the dice into your hand as fast as you possibly can.
I think the dice were already in the next person's hand before you're done moving.
Oh, nope, sorry, they rolled.
I'm so mad now.
I love this.
So
we're talking
Clue all the way.
30-year-old spite. This is what this is why I get up in the morning.
Well, I think we just brought up a pretty good point about Monopoly. Is it seems like none of us knew that rule, and that's the thing about Monopoly is everybody plays it, but nobody plays by the rules, and nobody ever wants to trade property ever. So like it's endless, it's interminable.
Oh, I love trading property in Monopoly. I'm always trying to make a deal. And I would say in my family, there's deals. There definitely are, especially if you're desperate. There is I have to like go on the stroll because otherwise I'm going to go bankrupt. So here's what I can sell for you. Like it's very Fantine from Les Mis.
Alms for the poor.
Exactly. Joelle, where are you?
Well, first, now I want to steal a loaf of bread, but yeah, I mean, with Monopoly, this has a long sort of history myself, and I don't think I ever fully enjoyed a game of Monopoly with my family. I did in college when I tortured my friends playing it, but again, as a children's game, I don't know that it is, frankly, a children's game. Clue, I enjoyed my whole life, childhood, all the way up through even today. So I think it's Clue for me. I think it's Clue.
So I'm going to take a different approach here and say that because every single person on this planet has a Monopoly horror story that comes from their childhood, I actually think that Monopoly is an iconic children's game because literally everybody has oh my God, not only is Monopoly long and complicated, someone screwed you over with the rules, or you didn't, or you played by someone else's rules where you're like, where were you raised? What is this like incredibly like complicated draconian process? The fact that nobody actually knows the rules to Monopoly.
Well, every family had a different set of rules. Like I went into my friend's house and I was like, you do what now? And free parking was a different rule in one house. And
exactly.
And it's ridiculous.
There were different rules with whether or not there was like a pot in the middle of the board that you could take. Yep. There was different rules when it came to
200 and nothing else. Like it was unbelievable to me.
It was crazy. Everybody had a different version of it, which I think is actually really cool. It's actually like a cultural thing. Like, how did you play Monopoly in your house? That's a podcast in and of itself. Tell me about how you played Monopoly. In my house, one of the most iconic memories I have is of my sweet grandmother playing with all of us and fully stealing $500 bills from us when we weren't looking. And like, I finally caught her. I was like, oh my God, Grandma, you are stealing Chad's money. And she would just giggle. And I was like, no, you can't take his money. But like, that's the type of game that I think teaches important lessons to children, which is number 1, trust nobody. Number 2, there are no rules. Number 3, be a good little capitalist. Like that's Monopoly. But it sounds like it's
the real game of life.
It's true. That's the real game of life. And also the sidebar, the rich always win. So with that being said, I believe it's 4 for Monopoly, or excuse me, 4 for Clue, 1 for Monopoly, correct?
I think so.
All right, so Clue will advance. Next up, it's Connect 4 versus Candyland. I'm going to start this time with Elliot. Elliot, which one should advance?
I think I'm going to go with Candyland.
Okay, do you have a reason why?
Well, Candyland is, I think I'm just going to say because it's easier to clean up. And it always brings me joy watching Ian play for hours and hours on that board,
just
doing nothing,
zooming around like a crazy person.
Yes.
Good.
And then doing that in the house.
Yes, right.
In real life, zooming around the house.
Yes, and I'm sure your parents appreciate that too. Jim, where are you?
Oh, that's tough. They're both great. I think we haven't talked about just looking at all the great candy on the Candyland board. I think I remember kind of getting lost in, oh, that's good. That's tasty. And I think that's where the game does add a little more for children, where, there are a lot of similar games, and it definitely lets you all the different versions you can imagine being whatever confectionery mountain there might be. So I think I'm going to go with Candyland, even though Connect 4 is a lot of fun too. Although, you're talking about cleanup. If they made the box right, you could put the box underneath where the things fall out, and it would fall right into them.
Yep.
We don't have that box, and that does drive me a little crazy. So I guess I'll go with Elliot's argument, and Candyland's the way to go.
For sure. And that, like, how have we not had the technology to make the Connect 4 box actually hold the things when they fall in it? Like, come on, it's 2022. Joelle.
So I didn't have either of these in my bracket at this point, so this is open for me. I like Elliot's logic. Big fan. When it comes down to it, so I read about the history of Candyland. Eric, did you already mention that, like, why the game was designed and the history?
I didn't go into it. I read about it, but I didn't include that. But if you want to talk about it, I think it actually is super interesting.
Yeah. So when I went to the National Museum of Play, the toy
Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Shout out to Rochester, New York. The history behind Candyland, the reason why it was designed was a teacher created it for children recuperating from polio. And if that isn't a reason for a game to have been designed in the first place, I don't know what. I just don't know. I have nothing else to say there. I just think that's a beautiful story for any game. And the fact that it still exists to this day and it didn't, disappear is a testament to how, just how simple the game is. I know I said that was a bad thing early on, but since we're up against Connect 4, these are two very simple to begin and end games. I remember playing this game with my grandparents a lot, and my very patient grandmother, never let me cheat. There was no cheating like your niece, Eric. But I was determined to always find my way into Gumdrop Mountain, determined. And sometimes we would play until I got to Gumdrop Mountain, even if the game was supposed to end like hours ago. So somehow she made it happen. I don't know. But I remember thinking the design of the game was great, and Connect 4 is just 2 colors and, simple. So
it's vertical checkers, kind of.
It's vertical checkers. And since checkers didn't make the board, there is a little bit of, what about checkers though? But no, I'm Candyland. Candyland's my vote.
Yeah, and I do want to just quickly what Joelle just mentioned about the National Museum of Play in Rochester. If you're listening to this and you have no idea what we're talking about, all of us at one point on this have lived or are living in Rochester, New York. And if you do not know the National Museum of Play, also called the Strong Museum, I think it's back to being called just the Strong Museum again. And you are a fan of children's games and play, it is an amazing place. Like it is truly incredible. And you can spend the entire day there and your children will never be bored. Is that a fair assessment, Jim?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Your adults
no matter
too.
What the age.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Elliot, do you like going?
They have a whole arcade on the top part too.
Yeah. What's your favorite parts of the museum, Elliot?
I love the arcade, and it's just really fun to go. And like everywhere you look, it's just fun.
Yeah. It's a great museum, truly one of the best ones. If you've got kids and you're looking for a road trip or whatever, you can't go wrong. Bob, where are you on this one?
Yeah, both really fun games for kids. I think I like the Candyland option better because it's colorful, it's more fun, it's got dynamic kind of images, it's an adventure for kids, maybe even a dabble into a little bit of fantasy. So I really love it. And in your research, Eric, did you know that it was involved in one of the first disputes legally over internet domain names?
I did see that, and I deliberately avoided it because of the makeup of this particular panel. But if you're interested, I encourage you to check it out because it is fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah.
So somebody else tried to take it and they're like, no.
No, this is a children's game. Yeah. So I'm also going to give it a clean sweep for Candyland. I have nothing against Connect 4. It's a great game. But and I think we've kind of touched upon this a couple different times now. There is something so visually alluring about Candyland, even as an adult playing it with my niece. Like, I didn't mind playing it, even though it's pretty mindless, like, because the scapes are so intricate. There's something about it that's just very, it taps into your imagination, and it's beautiful to look at. Like, it literally is just a beautiful board. And I think there is an art to actual game boards that we've kind of lost in recent years. Maybe it's proved me wrong. I'm fine. I urge you to write in and be like, no, these game boards are amazing. But like, I just think this is kind of one of the old school examples of a great game board. Then it has evolved over time. Like, even the root has changed. All right. That means Candyland advances. Next, it's Battleship versus Chutes and Ladders. We're going to keep going with Jim. Where are you on this one?
Talk about, if you're talking about beautiful boards, Chutes and Ladders is not it.
God, no.
This is a pretty ugly board. I think looking at these two, I think I'm going to go with Battleship because you can still have, even though it has strategy and all that, I think you can still have younger players play it as long as they can get the concept. Yeah. And I think that's a lot more fun, and there's more twists and turns than just kind of how the dice rolls and shoots.
Although technically Chutes and Ladders is filled with nothing but twists and turns, but I think you mean
that's
metaphorically.
Metaphorically, yeah.
All right. Thank you, Joelle. Where are you on this one?
I mean, the thing about Battleship is, it's inherently like a puzzle game too. And I love a puzzle. You're trying to figure out where to guess where things are. That's fun. There's a surprise there. Chutes and Ladders is laid out for you. There's no surprises. I guess it's a surprise if you land on a chute, I suppose. But no, I hate Chutes and Ladders. I really do. I never liked it, not once as a child. I can't vote for it, and I never will. Battleship.
Bob, where are you on this?
Yeah, I love both of these games for sure. Chutes and Ladders, you're right. It's not an attractive board, but Snakes and Ladders was certainly an attractive game board back in India. It had a lot of symbolic images, gods and demons, etc. It had a lot to do with destiny, desire, and karma. And I love the idea of karma in a board game. I got this look at me. I got the tallest ladder. And then, oops, you got the chute. Oh, sorry, you got the chute. So I kind of love that. I just think it's still just it's more the children's game that's super approachable, can be played by anyone. I guess I'm not a parent, but I as an adult, I'd be like, yeah, I'd play Chutes and Ladders with a child. And if somebody said that, I don't know as though I like Battleship as much, because I'm probably stuck playing it for a lot longer. And if I didn't want to play it in the first place, but the child said to me, do you want to play a game? And I'm like, sure, I'll play a game with you. So, I'd rather do Chutes and Ladders.
This is how long am I forced to interact with this child logic here? Is that your decision?
Yes. Elliot, don't hate me for that argument.
No,
hey, Elliot, we're gonna make sure we have Battleship ready for one of the
that's right.
Well, here's the thing,
and like the double board of Battleship. There's like 12 or 15 battleships on the board. Yeah.
Here's the thing: is if you ask me to play electronic Battleship, I will play that any day over any other game, because you get the missile sounds, you get the you sunk my battleship.
Yep.
So
it's true.
Get the batteries ready. Cool. Yep.
Elliot, where are you on this one? Do you prefer Battleship or Chutes and Ladders?
I think I'm going to go with Chutes and Ladders because it's really fun. And Battleship, I mean, I remember I used to have a trouble playing it, and I haven't played it actually in a while. But, I mean, it's fun, but I'm going to go with Chutes and Ladders for sure.
I think you should try playing it when Uncle Bob comes to visit next. And I bet you, no, seriously, I bet he's probably better at it now than he was, because it's one of those games that, like, when you're younger, you can't quite get the theory behind it. And as you get older, you're just like, oh, wait, I see how this works now. So give it a shot when Uncle Bob comes to visit next.
You're very good at strategy, Elliot. You're probably very good at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go with Battleship because, like Joelle, I never liked Chutes and Ladders. We didn't have it. And the times that I played it, I was just like, oh my God, like that is a game to me that never ends, because like you can be almost to the end and then someone hits the chute and you're like, oh, when will it end? When will death come? But like, it's just not a game that ever appealed to me. Maybe I would like it better if it was Snakes and Ladders. I don't know, but I've only played Chutes and Ladders, and it was just like, and here we go again. Oh, another slide. Like I have enough disappointment in my life. I don't need a board game. So I believe that's 3 for Battleship, 2 for Chutes and Ladders. So unless Joelle or Jim, are you going to keep your vote for Battleship, or are you going to switch?
You know my feelings on Chutes and Ladders.
Yeah.
It's not changing.
You love it.
Jim?
Oh, sorry. I'm looking up electronic Battleship right now. But
pretty sure he's staying with Battleship,
I think. He's staying, yeah. Finally, in round 2, it's Uno versus Hungry Hungry Hippos. I believe at this point we're on Joelle. Is that correct? Joelle, your vote.
We haven't talked about Uno yet, have we?
We haven't.
Mm-mm.
Oh, let's talk about Uno. How satisfying is it when a member of your family says Uno and you have a hand full of collect two, what is it? Oh my gosh. Draw two, draw 4, skip.
Reverse skip.
So satisfying. The best. And they're all matching, and you could just like play it, and you could get someone else to join you on it.
Absolutely.
And now 1 minute later, that person has like 12 cards in their hand.
Yep.
So satisfying.
It's taking me higher just thinking about it.
And that person is your like older brother. Not that I have 2 of them.
Yep.
Uno is so fun, and for all ages. You could play it with people of your own age. You could play it with your grandparents. You could play it with your parents. You could play it with anyone, and it is a game that anyone can win. I think it is a children's game through and through, but it's also a family game. Adults play it. What I also love about Uno is it has this versatility for theming. I, in college, bought the Fraggle Rock Uno.
Nice.
And it's delightful. I found out they also have like just regular The Muppet Show Uno, so Fraggle Rock, or just, Muppets, whatever. They have so many versions of Uno. What did I write down? I found they also have Shepherd Fairy Art. They released that last year.
Oh.
I was like, that's specific. If you just like art, they have Nintendo Uno. I'm sure you guys have seen all kinds of stuff. But anyway, Uno, beloved. Hungry Hippos falls apart after 30 minutes.
Yep, exactly. Okay, we're going to go back to the top of the order with Bob. Where are you on this one?
I'm going to be voting for Uno in this. I think everything that Joelle just said is absolutely true. And I think there is nothing more satisfying than laying out that draw for that smug person at the table is like, Uno.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Elliot, do you want to go with Uno or Hungry Hippos?
I'm going to go with Uno because it's perfect for the family. And like Ian, he doesn't know all his numbers yet, but still you can use the colors. And for most of the time, that's what you're based off of. And again, there's so many different types of Uno, and we have Uno reverse, and that's super fun.
Yeah.
So Uno flip.
Flip,
right.
Sorry.
Can you talk to me? What's that?
Tell me about Flip. I don't know that one.
So there's there's a couple cards in the deck that it's a flip card. So you flip it, and the other side, which is usually just the other side, has a different color, and then like it's neon colors. Ooh. And then just it's really cool. And
so it like twists around the game, so suddenly you're playing a different card.
So your hand now is totally different cards, and you're suddenly playing with those cards. If they could get the licensing, I would imagine it being Stranger Things Uno. Because
sure.
The upside
down. Yeah,
that would be a really great tie-in. It's brilliant.
I love that. Wow, that's
really fun
cool.
because you play another flip and then you go back to your old cards and so it mixes it up a lot. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, it probably doubles the length of the game, which good or bad, I don't know. Sorry, Bob.
Right.
No, that's great. Thank you. I had never heard of that. Jim, where are you on this one?
I think I would agree with a lot of what Elliot was saying there. With Uno, it is, again, I like a mix of strategy to some extent, but it's a level playing field of strategy, right? Like he mentions our 5-year-old, our 9-year-old, and Elliot all they can all play evenly pretty much once they've got the concept of the game, but it's not just like what happens to come out. It's they have to think about how they play it as well. So I really like that aspect of it. Hungry Hippos, you're just gobbling up balls.
Listen, I'm going to let that one go because we have...
That was for you.
I know, we're just going to let it go given our panelists, but thank you. And I'm sure our longtime listeners know exactly where that was going. I'm also going to go for Uno. I'm not going to go off on it because I want to save my arguments for future rounds. But before we get to those final four matchups in round 3, we're going to take another quick break before we are baselessly accused of murder yet again. We will be right back. Time to get off the B&O Railroad and pay up at the electric company. We are back with round 3 of our best children's game debate. Actually, I think we decided it's best classic children's game. Let's look at that final 4. It's Clue versus Candyland, Battleship versus Uno. Bob, the Patreon sponsor for this episode, are you happy with that final 4?
Yeah, I think that's a great final 4. The only one I think out of the 4 that I was maybe not thinking I would have here was maybe Clue. And maybe we will get into that in a minute. But I still think they're all great representations of games for either the family and children together. So
great. And what about our actual child on the panel? Elliot, what do you think of this final 4? Does it make you happy?
Yeah, it makes me happy. I really like it, but the clue is the one thing. The murder.
It's upsetting you.
But what if it's a slice of cheesecake, though?
Right. What if it's...
I mean, yeah, that would be great.
So what I'm hearing, Jim, is that maybe it's time to get a family-friendly version of Clue for the kids that doesn't involve murder.
You guys have the Star Wars version, right?
Yeah, we have the Star Wars.
Yeah,
I was just going to say.
Yep. That takes more setting up and cleanup because it's a 2-level thing. So you know how Elliot feels about that.
Yes, which I understand. But
we have the... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jim.
Sorry. Well, we also have they've added this new Miss White option on it with Clue as well.
What's that?
Where it does speed it up and mix it up a little bit. You what is it? Like if you roll doubles, I think you can pull this Miss White card, and it's something like hand your hand over to the person to your left, and they get.
Oh my gosh!
Card.
What?
Or it's like, have everyone hand you one, or declare something, and then everyone who has a card that proves it wrong shows it to you.
Wow.
And it really mixes it up a lot, actually.
Wow.
It does speed things up, I think, too, which does help with the length.
Why is it called Miss White version?
It's like Ask Miss White, because that's they mixed around the characters a little bit, and they took the Miss White is just for that part, and I think I don't remember what character they added.
Excuse me, do you mean to tell me that Modern Clue does not have Miss White as an actual playable character? I am scandalized.
Yeah. Yes, they added. I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, look this up. Let's get into this Final Four while you look that up, Jim. So it's Clue versus Candyland. I'm going to start with. Let's start with Elliot. Elliot, you very clearly are against Clue here, correct?
Yeah.
So
I am.
You're going for Candyland. Jim, do you have the answer for who they've replaced Miss White with?
Miss Orchid has been added, so Miss White can be this character. It also there is an Alexa tie-in for this, and I'm happy I just triggered some people's home Echo devices.
Wow!
But you can actually ask the device, and it'll have a voice that tells you like what to do with the card. So I think that was the thing that won me over to buy this version.
That is scandalous. Is that just regular old Clue?
Yeah, they say the classic mystery game. Meet the new suspect, Miss Orchid.
Wow!
That's what the
Mind blown. Okay, thank you for that, Bob. Where are you on this one?
Oh gosh. So I do love Clue. I don't want anyone to think that I don't think this is a good game or a fun game. I think it's more sophisticated than it needs to be for this list. I think Candyland is the classic from a classic child's game perspective of a game that many children can play at many ages. Easy to learn, easy to follow, easy to have your 5-year-old brother play with you and just be playing their own game while you're playing the actual game with the other people that you're playing with, right? It's colorful, it's fun, it's candy, right? You got Mr. Mint, you got the Duke of Swirl, you have Grandma Nut, as well as Lord Licorice, Fluffer Puffer, Plumpy, King Candy, excuse me.
I mean,
these are just some of the fabulous people who you play with. Go ahead, Erica, what were you going to say?
When you list out the names like that, I can understand more about how that IP lawsuit happened.
Yes, exactly.
They were just pitching it right over the plate right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a game of chance. It teaches colors. It teaches counting. It's you mentioned it's sold over 1 million copies each year. It was inducted into the National Toy Hall of Fame. I know that Clue certainly was as well. So that was in 2005 that one joined. But yeah, I think for me, that's where I think it kind of edges out. They both have beautiful game boards. Let's say that. I know Clue has an amazing movie associated with it, which
does. Also not
for children. There is Clue Master Detective, which is a version of it, which I know you have, Eric. I think you have my copy of it.
I
actually.
do. Yes.
Yeah, and then it adds additional characters, additional rooms, and things like that. So there's some additional weapons. There's variety there too, but it only makes it more complicated and more challenging, which isn't a bad thing. But I think that Candyland is something that anyone can really approach, play. Children love it. That's the colors. It's eye popping. It's a feast for their eyes. That's why I think Candyland really needs to come out over Clue in this matchup. That's just where I am.
Joelle, what about you?
I can't believe this is happening because
I can.
No. Whoa, you didn't hear what I was about to say.
Oh.
I can't believe this is happening because y'all convinced me.
Oh.
Ooh.
Clue is hands down my favorite game for the last however old I am. I turned 39 in a week. Yes, so 33 years I've loved the game of Clue. But you're right. You're absolutely right. This is best classic children's game. And Candyland is a better children's game. Clue happens to be nerd me's favorite game from my childhood. Doesn't mean it's every kid's favorite game. I'm actually remembering this very horrible version of Candyland that I've had in my house and I finally got rid of, called Kosherland. It somehow took Candyland and made it so much worse.
That's amazing.
Was there matzah bread?
I can't even remember what horrible things they replaced all the beautiful pictures of Candyland with, but they didn't even have the cards. They replaced the cards with a spinner, and the spinner couldn't even spin properly. It was truly awful.
Well, fun fact, they replaced the cards with a spinner on Candyland now too.
Oh, but the cards were my favorite part.
The cards are now a spinner on Candyland.
Because the cards were manipulatable, as your niece discovered. You can't really manipulate. I mean, you can manipulate a spinner. You could just put your thumb down in the right place, right? And a kid can learn that, and a kid can strategize in Candyland if they can figure out how to manipulate Candyland. So that's the strategy for you. There is still strategy in Candyland, so I'll accept it. It's a better children's game.
Jim, where are you?
What if I told you in Candyland you're actually murdering those pigs?
What now, Elliot? What now?
A great plot for a Blumhouse film.
Yeah, right. No, I agree with everything Joelle said. Candyland is classic, and even though a love of Clue is strong, Candyland is all of those things that you just said.
I'm also going to give it to Candyland. Of the two, I love Clue more, but I think, as many people have made the argument, for children, Clue is hard. Even if you're playing like Clue Junior or whatever, it takes some serious brain muscles, and this is something anybody can play at any age. So I'm going to go ahead and give it up to Candyland. Are you happy now, Elliot? Clue's out?
Yeah.
All right.
Elliot, you're very good at Clue, though. Let's point that out. Elliot's excellent with Clue.
Good.
I love Clue. Just I don't think for little children.
Yeah, you have your brother in mind, and you're thinking of kids of all ages. So you convinced half the panel. So good job.
Good job. Well done, sir. Next, it's Battleship versus Uno. I'm gonna start with Joelle on this one.
As far as games for children, I'm Elliot's logic is in my head now. I think Uno is a better game for children. I think it is easier to learn, more fun to play, much easier to clean up. You just throw all those cards back in the little box. All of your logic is in my head now. So Uno it is.
Jim.
Same here. I mean, Battleship, you're blowing up stuff. I gotta rid that of my house, apparently. So no. No, but Uno has always been our number one in the house. It's great for everyone. I think I just played Uno with our youngest 2 or 3 times this morning, just because he was like, "You want to play Uno?" And we had a little travel set. So Uno all the way.
Elliot, what about you? Battleship or Uno?
I'm going to go with Uno because just like my dad just said, Ian asked me to play Uno all the time. We go up in our treehouse and play Uno on the little table or on the floor with the beanbags. It's just super fun. Battleship, you have to do it on a table. You have to hide it, and it's just much more complicated for some younger kids, so I'm going to go with Uno.
Great. Bob, what about you?
Yeah, we haven't brought this up, but with Battleship, it's just 2 people, right? Yep. And Uno is lots of people. And you can even try to even probably combine decks and make it even more people. I remember most recently I was with Jim and Elliot at their home, and we had a friend over, a neighborhood friend over as well, and we all played around the table, and it was just a lot of fun being able to, either help Ian, because he was either, he does a really good job with it too, but like helping him when he gets confused or lost, or, watching the kids figure it out, meaning Colin or Elliot being able to figure out I absolutely know that Elliot loves it when he plays that draw 4 or that draw 2 or that reverse. He loves to stick it to people in Uno.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, see?
Attaboy, Elliot.
So I would give it to Uno in this pairing because I think it's a easier game for children, and everything Elliot said I thought was excellent. You're right. You have to play it on a table, right? You can play it on the floor, I suppose, but like if you're up in the treehouse, I'm not going to take Uno up, Battleship up into the treehouse, right? Because you'll lose the pieces or this or that, right? So I think Elliot made some excellent points in favor of Uno.
Yeah. So I'm going to make it a clean sweep for Uno, which means that you've sunk my battleship. And we have a final 2 of Candyland versus Uno. All right. I'm going to start with our extra special guest star, Elliot. Who should win between Candyland and Uno?
I've stuck with Candyland for a while. And I love it. But I'm going to go with Uno because it's good for family. It's good for all ages, and I'm just gonna go with
great.
Uno.
Mm-hmm. Now let's go to our Patreon sponsor for this episode. Bob, is it Candyland or Uno?
I have stuck with Candyland up until this point. But I think everything we've said about Candyland, we've also said about Uno. It's easy for smaller children to play. It's approachable, it's got colors, it's fun, there's mechanics in that allow you to be a little mischievous and evil with your family or your friends, whoever you're playing with. It has a little bit more of that oomph that you're looking for in a game, and I think we haven't talked about it up until this point as well regarding Uno. There is a variety, excuse me, I can't even talk this evening. There's not just different versions of like editions of like Masters of the Universe deck or whatever it might be. There's different like varietals of like Uno Attack, Uno H2O, Uno H2O to go, Uno Spin to go, Uno Stacko.
Yogurt right now?
Yeah, right? Uno Wild Jackpot. I'm just reading off of a Wikipedia page of the different, just not just a straight up card game, but just these bizarre varietals of like different ways to play Uno. We mentioned the Uno Reverse or Uno Flip or whatever it was that Elliot was talking about, right? So there's a lot of different variations of this too, which I would assume become more complicated or difficult as kids get older, and gives a change up of this game. So I'm picking Uno.
Uno the flamethrower. The kids love that one. Jim.
If they made, I don't know if they do this, but if they made a real candy version of Candyland, that would be the variant I would want, right? Yeah, I guess even though I'm not voting for, I'm going to vote for Uno. I would say that maybe there is an argument to be made that Candyland does not have different versions. That it is the classic that it is, and they don't need to reinvent or change or to sell more. It's there, and everyone knows how to play it. But I would say that they, like both of you have said already, they're great for kids. Even young kids, everyone's included. But what one's more fun for all the people participating? I think that's Uno. And if everyone's having more fun, then there's a greater chance they're going to say yes to playing with you if you're a younger kid. So I think Uno is the better way to go.
Joelle.
So it's Uno.
Okay. Joelle.
Just to add on to what Jim said, I think the point of Candyland is that you can't vary it. It needs to be that simple, approachable gameplay with the 4 colors and nothing more. And if they wackied it up and reversed it and, H2O to code it, it's not Candyland anymore. It's every other game that we haven't talked about yet. It's all the fun, European games we haven't talked about and the brand new non-classic games. Candyland has to be Candyland. The Coacherland game literally is just the Candyland, but with like a veneer on top. Candyland is classic for a reason. Uno, it can be everything. It can be anything. It can be, you could literally morph it into Play-Doh and turn it into Play-Doh Uno if you want to. I don't even know. Uno could be anything, and that's what makes it Uno. But the classic Uno is still the classic Uno, and everything all 3 of you have already said is why it, I think, is the winner of this bracket, but we'll let Eric decide. But Uno has my vote.
I mean, it would win even if I didn't vote for it. But I am voting for it. And a part of it is, and I haven't said up till now, like Uno was my family's game of choice for the holidays. And it was like, I think the argument was made like it's fun for all ages, and it is fun for all ages, but it is also the opportunity for revenge. It is the opportunity for spite, and it is the opportunity for the destroying of dreams. And that's really why it was a Resniak family favorite. My father would delight, and I think this really tells you everything you need to know about. He would be very strategic in who he would sit next to. Usually it was one of his grandchildren. And he would like take so much pleasure. He would have this little whistle he would do, and he would drop the bombs left and right. And like so many times, my nephews in particular would just be like, that is it. That is it. I cannot play anymore. Like they would get so upset because my father would just howl as he destroyed them. And I was just like, welcome to my childhood. But like the fact that it can be just so fun and breezy and everybody's having a great time, and at the same time you're playing the exact same game and it is so mean-spirited and just abusive, that's an incredible game. That really is like, think of the versatility. There's nothing else like Uno. And I will say, like, I've played some of the other versions. That flip sounds pretty cool, but I think Joelle touched upon this. Like, there's nothing like OG Uno. It's simple enough that anybody can pick it up, but it's complicated enough that it can go any which way. Like, you don't know. Someone can be down to 1 or 2 cards, and then one round of Blitzkrieg comes along, and like someone out of left field wins it. So it's a great setup. It's perfectly balanced. It's a heck of a lot of fun, and to me, it is the definitive Uno game. I completely blew that. The definitive classic children's game, it's Uno. So there you have it. Our pick for the best classic children's game of all time is Uno. Do you agree with our choice? Do you think we're wild? Let us know by picking, let us know your pick by leaving a comment on this episode at greatpopculturedebate.com, or yell at us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. While you're there, make sure you like and subscribe for more great pop culture debate content. And if you really like what you heard, please consider supporting us on Patreon, which can get you access to more exclusive episodes, merch, and the ability to suggest episodes for us to do in the future. I want to say thank you to my panelists. I'm always down for a game night with you. Thank you in particular to Patreon Bob for sponsoring this episode, and thank you for listening. If you would like to sponsor an episode, which includes the right to pick the topic and actually join us on the debate, please go to patreon.com/greatpopculturedebate and subscribe at the $25 a month level, or actually I was going to say or higher. There's no higher level. We only have one more slot of that level left, so until next time, remember, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinions.